Prabhupada ki.
Can you queue up something for me?
Yeah.
Okay. Have lapel mics yet?
I couldn't find them. Yeah. The little receivers over there, but the two lapel mics are missing.
Okay. So, not this part. Missing.
How you spell Marlon down there?
M-A-N.
M-A-N.
G-A-N.
G-A-N. A-N-A.
D.
So, good morning. Welcome. In this frigid northern day in Florida, of the three mysteries of the material world, can somebody tell me which one this is?
Any diving guys?
Yes, Adhyadhika. It is external to us, but we can't help it. So welcome you all. Welcome my friend John Shekhar. Many of you know him, many of you don't, but he's here as senior devotee, so we should always welcome. So we begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 This is third canto, 26, verse 62 to 72. Well, I think all of you use Google Maps. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
What did you do before Google Maps was invented? I'd like anyone under 25 to answer that question. Yes. Anybody who's under 25 years old, answer that question. Yes.
We had it printed out on the computer off of MapQuest.
Yes. Yeah, we printed out and what the gas stations used to give out maps.
You had to use the signs on the road.
Signs on the
You know,
road.
like on the highway. You have
Yeah, you could see the signs, but sometimes you didn't know which one to take. But you're right. Now, this chapter is a Google Maps chapter. Now, what do I mean by that? This chapter here, the fundamental principle of material nature, tells you how, in detail, to navigate the material nature. Just like we want to navigate to get to Tallahassee, we have to go take I-75 north, then get on the most boring highway I've ever been on, I-10, and take it through swamp after swamp, and then make it to Tallahassee. Yes, yeah, and any version of his. This chapter is the roadmap of how to navigate the material world. So I'm trying to give a context of what we're doing. The name of the chapter, Prabhupada gave it, is Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. And Prabhupada gets into quite a bit of detail, something called Sankhya philosophy, analytic philosophy. There are different ways of achieving devotional service. One of them is by analyzing the world and coming to the conclusion, which happens in this chapter, that, this world and I are not the same. So, we'll, begin with verse 62. So we'll go around the room and various Prabhus can read the verses, beginning with 62. Then when we get to 72, we'll read purport and have a little discussion. So who'd like to begin with 62? So, you said the microphones are not yours.
Yeah, we're looking for, I'm sorry, group.
Oh, that's okay. No.
When the demigods and presiding deities of the various senses were thus manifested, they wanted to wake their origin of appearance. But upon failing to do so, they re-entered the body of the Virat Purusha one after another in order to wake him.
The god of fire entered his mouth with the organ of speech, but the Virat Purusha could not be aroused. When the god of wind entered his nostrils with the sense of smell, but still the Virat Purusha refused to be awakened.
The sun god entered the eyes of the Virat Purusha with the sense of sight, but still the Virat Purusha did not get up. Similarly, the predominating deities of the directions entered through his ears with the sense of hearing, but he still did not get up.
The predominating deities of the skin, herbs, and seasoning plants enter into the skin of the Purusha through the hair of the body, but the cosmic being refused to get up even then. The god predominating of water enters his organ and generating into the faculty of
That sounds like me in some mornings.
procreation, but the Virat Purusha still will not rise.
And you have that where they just don't want to get up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Lucky day.
yeah. That can happen to predominating deity too. So, I mean, as we say, they're only superhuman. Okay, next verse.
The god of death entered his anus with the organ of defecation, but the Virat Purusha could not be spurred to activity. The god Indra entered the hands with the power of grasping and dropping things, but the Virat Purusha would not get up even then.
Now, the Virat Purusha is called the universal form of the Lord. We may have time to discuss that more later. Continue, Lord Vishnu, next verse. Anybody come here? Anybody?
Lord Vishnu entered his feet with the faculty of locomotion, but the Virat Purusha refused to stand up even then. The rivers entered his blood vessels with the blood and the power of circulation, but still the cosmic being could not be made to stir.
The ocean entered his abdomen with hunger and thirst, but the cosmic being refused to rise even then. The moon god entered his heart with the mind, but the cosmic being would not be roused.
Brahma.
Yeah, go on.
Brahma also entered his heart with intelligence, but even then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon to get up. Lord Rudra also entered his heart with the ego, but even then the cosmic being did not stir.
However, when the image controller, the deity presiding over consciousness, entered the heart of reason, at that very moment, cosmic being arose from the casual flames.
When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working, the mind, and the intelligence cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the super soul helps him.
Do we have anybody here in the ashram where you just can never get up in the morning? Okay, you don't have to name names. But kind of like that. Just it doesn't work. I remember my kids, they're happy to get up from Mongol Arctic, very young. I'd go in and sing G, and me sing G Jago is, anyway, I always say I have a voice made for newspaper and a face made for radio, and that did not work well for them. But they did have to get up. Found it. Everybody here, over there. Someone steal it. I'm gonna take it off there. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so, next verse.
Therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge, acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it.
Okay, and let's go to the Sanskrit, and I'm going to ask Chandrasekhar to read it.
Which number?
72. To lead the chanting of the Sanskrit, and we'll, because there's a lot of verses, we'll have a few people repeat it. Is that okay, Chandrasekhar? Sure. Okay.
Tamasmin pratyagatmanam Diya yoga praprittaya Bhaktya viraktya jnanena Vivichatmani chintaye
Maybe ladies.
Asim prayat yat atmanam Iya yoga pravatyaya Bhaktya vriktya jnanena Vivichatmani chintayet
Okay, somebody want to do the word for word?
We just did it together.
What, you just do it together? Atmani in the body, Chintaya, one should contemplate. Okay. One can realize a super soul within oneself. Now listen to this, a super soul. One can realize a super soul within oneself. When I first heard this, I wondered, what does that mean? Can I actually understand the super soul within? The yogis meditate for years and years to try to see the super soul. Is that something that I can do? Who here has understood the super soul within? Raise your hand. Who here has not understood the super soul within? Who doesn't know? Aha. Okay. Actually, you all have. That was a trick question. Because there's something called the signal noise ratio. Now, in the old radios, you would tune the radio, especially AM, amplitude modification, modulation radio. You'd have to tune it. And when you're not exactly at the station, you get a lot of static. And then as you get, then you go a little past the station, you get static again. And you get the exact spot, and then you can hear the music or the news, whatever. You have to get the noise, the signal much greater than the noise when you get the exact station. Similarly, Supersoul is always speaking to all of us every day, but our signal noise ratio is such that we're not listening. But by controlling the senses, we start hearing Supersoul. So every one of you, some of you, I mean, if I was in class and would ask, do I realize Supersoul within? I'd say, probably not, because my mind is going here and there. But when I really think about it, yeah, Krishna's always telling me things. Sometimes I'm listening, sometimes I'm not. But all of us can realize Supersoul. We do not need to be a yogi meditating for millennium, sitting on kusha grass and holding the breath. In fact, when Krishna told Arjuna, that's what you need to do, Arjuna said, it's more difficult to do that than to control the wind. And yesterday you saw the wind when it hit Gainesville when this cold front came in. No one could think of controlling the wind. Who here has been in a hurricane? Oh, those who haven't. This year, in 2025, we didn't have one. 2026, you'll get your fund. You can't even think of controlling the wind. And it's impossible. So Arjuna uses that metaphor. But Krishna says with patience, determination, you can. So the Sankhya is that analytic method to take us there. There are different methods to take us to devotional service. And for those who are very intellectual, there's the Sankhya method. So he is within one's body, but apart from the body, or transcendental to the body. So basically, saying here, we're not this body. So we'll give you a little song to emphasize that point. Go for it.
Yeah, turn the volume back up.
Or transcendental to the body. So basically,
We have to delay a second because his voice.
A little delay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, turn the volume back up.
Or transcendental to the body.
Turn out, but I've always wanted to.
So basically,
We have to delay a second.
creative ways to present concepts that go deeper. So, and as actually this was done by a visitor to our institute. She's an 83-year-old lady who loves our topic that consciousness is not an emanation from the brain, but it's fundamental. And one of the rare ladies who was a senior manager at IBM, it was a very men-oriented company. And so she's giving us some organizational guidance and challenged us on You're Not This Body. And then we came up with another way of saying it. And here it goes. You are more than this body. Because you are not this body is a correct statement. Krishna says in the second chapter. The Gita, obviously correct. Sometimes it's misconstrued. I'll give an example. You are not this body. I'll give a horrible example of it. One of the most horrible examples I have come across. I was living in a small town in India. And I wasn't a aspiring devotee at that time. I was a high school teacher in a school in this town that was composed of Hindus, Christians, Muslims, and tribals. And I was invited by the townspeople to the town square to go to a celebration at midnight. And what do they do at midnight? They have a goat. And they take the goat, and the priest whispers in the goat's ear. Prabhupada talks about it, but I witnessed it. I am killing you this life. You can get me next life. Then I left at this point. I couldn't watch the rest. They slit the goat's throat, offered to Kali, and they have a feast of goat meat. And so in this town I lived in, there were only 2 vegetarians. One was me, and one was a Buddhist. And Buddhists were kind of rare in India at that time. And he was a teacher at my school. And I asked him, why are there only 2 vegetarians in a town of 10,000 people? And he told me the horrible story. 10 years before I got there, some sadhu came and he gave a talk. You are not this body. Good. The animals are not this body. Good. Therefore you can eat them. And the whole town became that, at least the Hindu side, the Muslims and Christians were already non-veg. The Hindu side, in one day, all became non-veg. So you are not this body can be exploited. I've seen it in our own society where people, you are not this body. If somebody thought they're not this body and decided to go out wearing just their shorts and a t-shirt today, that would not be very clever as they get pneumonia and everything. So you're not this body sometimes comes out in a way that we neglect the body. Prabhupada, the body is our vehicle, so we need to take care of it. Just like take my car. I change the oil, I change the wiper blades, I take care of it. But I was in the parking lot at Krishna House, and I have a 14-year-old car. I don't like new cars. You'll see why in a moment. 14-year-old car, and Abhishek's pulling out of the lot. It's all crowded, and he nicks my car. And he feels so bad about it. I say, Abhishek, you nicked my car. Now you have to do me a big favor. You have to nick the other side so it's symmetrical. It's a 14-year-old car. I'm not this car. Who cares? Who cares? That's why I don't like new cars, because we're all attached to it. We identify with this new car. And as soon as we get the first nick, we actually physically feel the pain. I've seen it. People, one guy, I remember he bought a new car. I was watching him, and he wasn't watching and drove immediately into a pole. He was looking the other way with his brand new car. He felt as much pain as if I had torn his body to shreds. So we're not this body is a necessary concept, but it can also go too far when we neglect it. Like I remember my aunt would never, she didn't know you're supposed to change the oil. And one day I borrowed her car, go to New York, and all of a sudden the car dies crossing one of the bridges into New York. There I am, my car dead on the highway. And those days they had traffic helicopters reporting traffic jams. And I'm listening to it. There it is, car on the such and such bridge broken down. And that was me, my moment of fame. but that's not what I wanted. And she neglected her car, just like we can neglect our body. So you are not this body doesn't mean you neglect the body. So at the BI now, we're presenting it, you're more than this body, much more. I like that concept. It goes a little deeper. So now to continue here. Although sitting in the same body as the individual soul, the super soul has no affection for the body, where us, the individual soul, does. One has to detach himself, therefore, from the material body. How? By discharging devotional service. It's clearly mentioned here, bhaktiya, that one has to execute devotional service. As stated in the first canto, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayachita. When Vasudeva, the all-pervading Vishnu, the Supreme Person, is served in completely pure devotion, detachment from the world begins. Purpose of Sankhya, that's what this chapter is about, is to detach oneself from material contamination. This can be achieved simply by devotional service. When one is detached from the attraction of material prosperity, one can actually concentrate his mind or her mind upon the super soul. In other words, if we're detached, we can start understanding super soul. For the attachment clouds our vision. It's like having cataracts. As long as a mind is distracted towards the material, there is no possibility of concentrating one's mind intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm going to jump ahead to the last paragraph. In the Bhagavatam first canto, it is stated that one becomes joyful, and says so in the Gita, one becomes joyful, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam, by this most king of all knowledge, the most confidential of all knowledge, one becomes joyful. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science, God, or Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it's not possible. The analytical study, Sankhya, of the material elements, the concentration of the mind on the super soul are the sum and substance Sankhya philosophical system. The perfection culminates in devotional service. And we're going to go back to the previous verse. However, when the inner controller, the deity presiding over consciousness, enter the heart within reason, at that very moment, the cosmic being arose from the causal waters. Now, there's a big question that's asked. Has anybody here heard of this saying that began 32 years ago? 34 years ago, the hard problem of consciousness. Anybody heard that saying? You've heard it. There's a very famous philosopher who's at New York University named David Chalmers. David Chalmers was looking at consciousness and saying it's the hard problem in science because we don't know what it is. To say that consciousness is just an emanation from the brain, there is all kinds of evidence against that. This is what we do at the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So David Chalmers gave a speech 30 some odd years ago, 32 years ago, at the Science of Consciousness conference. And this is the biggest conference in the world. Last year we had 9 devotees speaking there and chairing 2 sessions. This year, same thing. And I'll be speaking out there in Tucson in April. And he gave the talk at the first conference, What is the Science of Consciousness? And when he gave his talk, he had already published a book, The Hard Problem of Consciousness. And a few years ago, he's given the keynote address. And here's what he said during his keynote address. He said, we've been having this conference for 30 years to try to solve the hard problem of consciousness. We still haven't solved it. Of course, it's right here. We have solved it right here. But he hasn't read this yet. We haven't solved it. But my journey began 4 years before that. He said at this talk 2 years ago, my journey began 34 years ago when the Bhaktivedanta Institute invited me to their conference on the science of consciousness, and I spoke. That's where my journey began. We were floored here in front of 800 of the top people in the world. He's calling out, he said his journey began with us. That was really quite nice. So he's coined this phrase, the hard problem of consciousness. Now that's a new novel came out. Who here has heard of the Da Vinci Code? Yeah, you see, read the book, seen the movie. Okay. Who here is reading these karmic books? Okay, never mind. Okay. And Da Vinci Code actually is a quite interesting novel because Dan Brown, none of the reviewers pick up the subtle point he had in it, but very, very important point. In the Da Vinci Code, he establishes the feminine aspect of God. He talks about it a lot. He did his homework. It was suppressed by the Christian church at the Council of Nicene. But before that, the feminine aspect of God is prominent. In the Vaishnava tradition, the feminine aspect of God is primary. Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, Sita Ram. The feminine, we don't have God without the feminine aspect of God. Somehow it got suppressed. Historically, we can go into the reasons why during questions if somebody likes, but that happened. And Dan Brown came out with a new novel in October. And the new novel now is number 3 on New York bestseller list. And the novel is called The Secret of Secrets. And curiously, in the preface to this novel, he says, I want you to know that all the science in this novel is actual real science. This is a novel, but I didn't make up the science. And in this novel, he's trying to establish one point. Remember, this is number 3 bestseller. That point is that consciousness is not an emanation from the brain. He's trying to, and this guy sold 250 million books. He's big. Trying to establish that consciousness is not an emanation of the brain. First comes consciousness, and then comes matter. Same thing here. Matter is there, but the matter is animate. It can't do anything till consciousness enters it, which is separate from matter, not a product of matter. This is what the Bhagavatam is saying. Curiously, that's what Dan Brown says in this New York Times best-selling novel. When that novel came out, being at the BI, I read it. I try to do a little embarrassing, try to do every year a Kartik Vrata. It's a 620-page novel. So my Kartik Vrata is to read more. So this year was to read his novel. That was my extra reading. It's so important for the BI. But it was, it's Dan Brown. It's a page turner. It's not a dull read. But he quotes a lot of the same science we study that establishes that consciousness is not an emanation from the brain. So that was verse 70, and then and 71 goes into sleeping. The material energies at rest. It can't awaken until consciousness enters it. The Virata Rupa, the universal form. Conscious needs to enter, and it's concluding here through devotion. Acquired through concentrated devotional service, one can understand the super soul as present in this body, although apart from it. And the famous example Prabhupada gives, there's a tree, and the tree is this body. We are a bird in the tree, and next to us is another bird, which is super soul. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions on these points before we go on. Chandrasekhar.
Thank you. Especially that part about consciousness is so inspiring. You mentioned David Chalmers, and it made me think of Ian Stevenson. For those who may not know, is the pioneer of studies on children who claim to remember their past lives. And according to BT Prabhu back in LA told me that Ian Stevenson, when he retired, he said, he said the only thing he regretted in his entire career of decades of studying children who remember their past lives, allegedly, is that his peers in the academy did not take his research seriously enough. And coming to David Chalmers, like a year ago, I wrote to him. I was looking at NYU, and to my disappointment, he said, "Yeah, and I mentioned Ian Stevenson and studying the paranormal and stuff." And paraphrasing him, he said, "It's of no concern to me." And so my question is, Prabhu, how come there's this apathy, which for us devotees seems so shocking on the part of the scientists, regarding paranormal phenomena?
Well, because if David Chalmers would accept that conscious is primary, if it's solved that way, then David Chalmers ought to change his lifestyle. He's attached. It says right here, his attachment prevents it. Now, Ian Stevenson, that's an interesting case. Ian Stevenson, he's passed on. He was a professor at the University of Virginia, Division of Perceptual Studies. And his successor is Jim Tucker, who's spoken at our functions. And they studied 2,500 cases where children would remember their previous life. This before the internet, no way to look it up. Somebody would claim to know who their parents were in previous life. And they take this child to a village they'd never been to, and they pick out which was the house was theirs, and who were the parents. And there's all kinds of evidence. And that's quoted in The Secret of Secrets. When we're doing I mentioned we're doing a workshop at the Science of Consciousness. We're doing our workshop. It's our workshop, but our speakers include the University of Virginia, Division of Perceptual Studies, Ian Stevenson's successor. So he's one of the speakers at the workshop we're putting on. And we have very close relationships. Now, this takes us into an interesting phenomena. There's several institutions that study what we call the paranormal. And quoted a lot in The Secret of Secrets, Noetic Institute, the Duke University has one, the University of Virginia, things that we cannot explain. I'll give an example of this, that another area that we'll be discussing when we're at the Science of Consciousness conference, near-death experiences. We recently had a lecture given by a professor from the University of Florida, Lou Ritz. Now, Lou Ritz is a very interesting fellow, glad to say a personal friend. He taught for generations all the medical students in neuroscience. And he's been vegetarian, meditator, different tradition, but since 1972. And I attended his near-death experience lecture at the University of Florida. It's relevant for us. And in it, he gave all the usual examples. I'll give you one or two. Somebody's on the operating room table. And Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia has written books on this. He's the world expert on near-death experiences. And in this example is somebody's on the operating room table. It's a 6-hour operation. They're under the heaviest anesthesia possible. Their eyes are taped shut and they're totally unconscious. Major operation, maybe transplanting an organ or I don't know, whatever. And in a 6-hour surgery, there might be 3 or 4 doctors. And it's not uncommon for one of the doctors to take a break. Well, the lead doctor in this one example I'm giving took a break, went down the hall, went into a room, shut the door, and called his stockbroker to see did the stock go up or down. While he was there calling the stockbroker, the patient flatlined. Flatline mean, the heart monitor flatline. Basically, he died. Soul didn't quite leave the body entirely. He was revived by the other doctors and came back. After the surgery, the patient the lead doctor comes to see the patient, and the patient says, "Why the hell did you leave during surgery to talk to your stockbroker?" He's down the hall. There's no way to hear it. Left the operating room, which is double doors, went down the hall, went in his office and shut the door. Another example is there's a patient, again, flatlined during surgery. He came back and he says to the doctor, "Go to the roof of the hospital, which is inaccessible. Only security can go there. You'll find a toy fire truck on the roof, and it's there." So this is what the lecture at the University of Florida talked about. The many examples of near-death experiences. We're trying to demonstrate the body is different than the consciousness. Then when he spoke at the Bhaktivedanta Institute, we have a series called the Insight Stream. He took a different approach, one I wasn't expecting. And he talked about those people. Anybody here have a real near-death experience? What happened? A microphone.
So to keep it short, I basically was during my drug addiction a while back, like 2016.
Yeah.
I basically had somebody cut the thing I got with fentanyl, which is like
I know. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so I OD'd and was dead for 5 minutes. That's what my mom told me. And so I was in the back of the ambulance, and I guess it took 2 boxes of Narcan to revive me. And all I remember was it was like pure darkness, like it just was all black. And then all of a sudden, like I woke up and I was in the back of the ambulance, and I was still like I thought my mom was there and everything, but she wasn't. And so and then and then after that, I was able to have out of body experiences on a regular for like about a year. It was almost like every single week, like tons of them. And so that was my experience with that.
And that's the common experience. People have a near-death experience. Their life changes. That changed your life, didn't it? It's life-changing. So here's the lecture Professor Ritz gave at the Bhaktivedanta Institute. He says, the overwhelming majority of people who have dramatic near-death experiences, it changes their life. He said, but you don't need a near-death. This is what surprised me in the lecture. It wasn't the same one at the university. Here, he's speaking to us. He said, you don't need a near-death experience to change your life. Just become a meditator. You'll get all the same benefits of a near-death experience, including understanding you are not this body. And that was the point. Just become a meditator. You know, basically, chant Hare Krishna, and you get all the benefits. And you don't have to strangle yourself to the point of death to wake up and say, I'm not. You had to go through the most dramatic, almost died experience. But if you just, his point was, if you just meditate, he does a little different mantra, but it's a bona fide mantra. But just chant a mantra, and you get all the same benefits of knowing you are, and what is the saying? More than this body. Thank you. A true listener. Very good. You'll know that you're more than this body. So we'll stop here. Are there any other questions? Yes. There's one question in back. You can go first. You have a question?
Yeah. How you mentioned like in a sense like a radio, like a frequency for the Paramatma, correct? Right in the beginning.
Yes, I did.
So my question is like, how does one distinguish like a signal from Paramatma or like intuition in a sense compared from just the mind?
Well, that's
like the reality, like a delusion.
That's a good question, because does anybody want to stab and answer that one? The question is, how can I tell if the realization I'm having is real or it's just my mind? How do I know what's real? Yeah, anybody want to give an answer? Oh, Gopal. Gopal's good for answers. Go for it, Gopal.
I don't know if you'll like this one, but years and years ago, when they were talking about communicating, channeling the spirit, the super soul or whatever, Bodhi said, if we think the spirit soul is talking to us, we should immediately suspect our mind. You know, God told me to shoot John Lennon. God told me to call Clemson.
Yeah, we should, but we can also, it's a very good point, Gopal, but we can also, there is a checks and balance system. Like in America, before the current presidency, we used to have a checks and balance system where you had the courts and the Congress and the president. It was brilliant checks and balance system, which now seems to have evaporated. But so we have a checks and balance system to tell. What's it called?
Benjamin Franklin pros and cons list.
Well, no, it's let's say the Sanskrit words. Yes. Yes.
Guru Sadhu Sastra.
Yes. Okay. Is what I'm thinking confirmed by the Guru, confirmed by Shastra, confirmed by other sadhus? We have a checks and balance system to know, is this just our mind going, it's rubbish, blah, 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 or is it real? We actually have a system that really works, just like the American government used to really work. We won't get into more politics now, but it did stop working. So that's the point. Is there any final question? We're almost at that 8:30 mark. Yes.
I'm so fascinated with the near-death experiences. I had read a book one time called Many Lives, Many Masters, where this lady got put under hypnosis and started recalling. Yeah. But I was just wondering, in your studies, are there any like significant kind of reoccurring patterns for people that have those experiences while they're flatlined that you think are like relative to what we're talking about?
Well, I mean, this is discussed in Jim Tucker's book. And we have our own team in India now doing further reincarnation studies. Now, why do reincarnation studies? Why are most of Jim Tucker's, not all, some of them were very, very much in America, but why are most of them in India and not other places?
Families are more open to the idea.
Exactly. Because in India, everyone knows it could have reality. I have my own reincarnation experience. My own son, when he was 3, 4 years old, he kept remembering a previous life. And we just thought it was his imagination. Later on, after I read Ian Stevenson's work, I realized, boy, I could have probed deeper into what my son was talking about. He was a sannyas previous life, saying he died in an airplane crash. He kept talking about it. It was so strange. And he would always carry around a dunda. He was like 3 years old. He wanted to have a dunda. It was just uncanny. And of course, at that time, I didn't know about these things. So, I mean, I knew I was practicing devotional service, but I didn't know the science behind it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, one question in back. Yes.
I wanted to ask really quick.
A microphone, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this is for the home audience.
Thank you. This was a really interesting class. I wanted to ask really quick about, sometimes for me, it feels like the confirmation that something is coming from Super Soul is that it is reconfirmed quite quickly by reading Shastra or hearing from someone. They repeat the thing that I was feeling or thinking. And I wondered if that connection, because that's what it seems like to me, right? Is Super Soul in me and Super Soul in them, they're connected. And so I wondered if that's somehow in Shastra somewhere, or if I'm just speculating because it feels nice.
That's my experience too. That there aren't coincidences. That we can start seeing that there's a lot more connectivity than we know. So you're just experiencing the connectivity that's already there. I'll give a science example, a little technical, and I'll be a little quick. In 100 years ago, 200 years ago, science thought there was an ether, and that's how light promulgated through an ether. It's in the Bhagavatam, it's in all Western literature from 150 years ago. Then science progressed saying there is no ether. It's just space, it's just an empty vacuum. Until the Higgs field came up. Turns out there are fields all over the place, and there's no matter. And again, Higgs boson, all this. I'm not going to get into technical details here. But it turns out there is an ether, and modern physics declares it. They don't call it ether, but it's what Bhagavatam describes as ether. There is a great connectivity to everything. And to experience that connectivity, as we control our senses more, as we increase our devotional service, we see more and more of this connectivity. So as you see these relationships, a reality pops out of it. So what you're seeing could be very, very real. I hope that helps. But we have our testing system, Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, because we can also be on an acid trip and see all kinds of weird things. And, we meet people all the time. And not that any of you would have ever been on an acid trip. But, so we can also be hallucinating. It can happen. So how do you distinguish hallucination from reality? Again, we have a system to do that. But I suspect what your experience is the reality, the connectivity. It's not coincidence. Okay, so thank you all very much. May you all stay warm today. The good news is, I checked at the time you're serving Krishna lunch, it will actually reach 50 degrees. And so we're having a major heat wave in the middle of the day. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Oh, sorry, I thought we could only
He's pulling it up. Namo Brahmane.
Oh, wait. It's already up, but we have to.
Man Prasade Govinde Swabhunya Patamratam
Fortunate person. It's spiritual.
John!
Somebody please get
I'm gonna make this thing work so much better. I'm gonna set up OBS.
I'm not sure how how I could bring it up. I could. Sorry about yesterday, bro.
I'll talk to Kumari then.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
About today is
no worries. If you're busy now, we can just talk on the phone later or something.